Welcome back to This Is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander, Tough Rules, and Cool Interactions, episode 101. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the new asymmetrical board wipes from the recently released Doctor Who set, and a sneaky little way that you can save a creature of yours, or multiple creatures of yours, in a very strange way. So let's take a look at the board wipe. It's called Gallifrey Falls No More, and this one card is an instant speed fuse card with the red half of Gallifrey Falls, dealing 4 damage to each creature, and if a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. And then the white half of No More says that any number of target creatures you control phase out. So clearly, this is something that when you cast it yourself, you really do want to have the whole 9 mana so that you can fuse these halves together, which results in you getting to protect your own creatures by phasing them out. Some of you may wonder, though, why this protects your creatures, since the first half of this card is the half dealing the damage, which does in fact mean that creatures will be dealt the damage before they phase out, so then they should still die. But as we've covered in previous episodes, damage doesn't destroy creatures, but it is a state-based action that does so, specifically CR 704.5G. And state-based actions are not checked while a spell or ability is still resolving. So the creatures will be dealt the damage, but then phase out, and then finally state-based actions would be checked, and they're now considered to not exist, being phased out, and so the game doesn't check them. So what happens if your opponent is the one casting this when you try to swing them out? Gallifrey Falls No More is an instant, making it a very powerful board wipe for a surprise. So let's take a look at a scenario. Let's say you're playing your 11th Doctor deck, and you have an Embercleave attached to your Doctor, which gives it +1/+1 and also double strike. So basically a total of 8 combat damage. The opponent you attack is at 8 life and has only their tapped creatures available and none of them for blocking, so this would be a lethal swing against them. So after you assign your attack towards them, they try to save themselves by casting a fused Gallifrey Falls No More, saving their creatures but dealing 4 damage to all creatures and killing your Doctor before going to combat damage. Now, in your hand, you have access to a God's Willing, which is a white instant that says target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. And then you also get to scry 1. Now, you could use that God's Willing to give your Doctor protection from red until end of turn. This would prevent the 4 damage from Gallifrey Falls and save him. But at the same time, it would cause the red Embercleave to become unattached from your Doctor, meaning he would no longer be dealing lethal damage to your opponent and opening you up to their crackback next turn. So is there a way to save your Doctor without dooming your lethal attack that leads to your demise? Yes. For the answer to this situation, we must take a look at CR 702.102b, which states that a fused split spell has the combined characteristics of its 2 halves, and in this specific case, the characteristic that we care about are the colors of the spell. In the case of someone casting Blasphemous Act, and you using God's Willing to save your creature, you would have to pick red. But in the case of Gallifrey Falls No More being fused, it now is a red and also a white spell, even though it's just the red half that is dealing the damage. The source of that damage is now both red and white. So you could cast your God's Willing and call white as the color to give protection. This would save it from the damage and also not cause the Embercleave to be removed. Quite a very sneaky thing that it may not actually come up in many games, so here is another scenario that is more likely to come up. Let's say you still have your Doctor, but instead of Embercleave, you now have Sword of Hearth and Home, which is an equipment that gives the equipped creature protection from both green and white. If your opponent were to cast a fused Gallifrey Falls No More, your creature with protection from white would just be protected from the damage, as long as they do decide to cast it fused. If they do not fuse it and only cast it as the Gallifrey Falls half, then it would still deal 4 damage to your 4 toughness Doctor as just a red source of damage. This can be a handy trick as well for you if you're the one casting Gallifrey Falls No More. Maybe there are certain creatures you want to stay out after the board gets wiped as blockers, perhaps. But in the case of Gallifrey Falls No More, the No More side that lets you phase out creatures, it does in fact use the word target, which means that your creature with Hearth and Home wouldn't be able to be a legal target for it to phase out. So try to keep these little things in mind if you're adding Gallifrey Falls No More to a lot of your decks, or if it's just a card that sees a lot of play at your LGS. An instant speed, possibly one-sided board wipe is a very powerful thing, even though it is going to be 9 mana. So I imagine a lot of people are going to be running this card. And now for your bonus question. If your opponent casts a fused Gallifrey Falls No More, and he only controls one creature on his board, and he does target that creature with the No More half to be phased out, could you basically counter or fizzle his whole spell and save your whole board by using a removal spell like Path to Exile on that targeted creature? Why or why not? Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.